Excited to do this next interview here. We had Erik Kramer on for a great interview, and we decided to make it kind of an interview series here because his career and his life has been so rich and dense with different experiences and lessons learned and things that I think other people can learn from. So we're excited to do this. So, Erik, I have two notes for you on the way in. One, you don't have to talk to just me this time. We've got the namesake of the show, Shayne Graham, in studio. So that's good for you. You get to talk to me less. And the other thing is, so we celebrate the thing of the day, as you know, and we were kind of fiddling around with how to do this. This is what I'm going to try for the first iteration because it's National Puzzle Day, Corn Chip Day, and Curmudgeon Day. I am wondering who Erik Kramer played with that would most fit the definition of a curmudgeon.
I'm trying to. Now you got me thinking. I don't know anyone in that category actually. So let's make it. What was the other two choices?
We've got corn chips and puzzles. So do you like puzzles, or do you have a favorite corn chip?
I love puzzles. Yeah, and I'm not a big chip person, but. Yeah, let's go with the puzzle one.
It's tough to ask athletes about corn chips because I had the same thing with Shayne. He doesn't eat a lot of corn chips. He's too clean. He eats too well. So it's like I'm sitting here we were talking about walking tacos and stuff. He's not. He hasn't eaten a corn chip in a long time. So
I'd put myself in that category too, for the most part.
Yeah, I mean that's why you guys got to the level that you did here in your careers, and that's why I never made it past sophomore year of high school here for my football career. So, but I'm excited to talk about your football career here. This is a great one to have Shayne back in studio for, because just to catch the audience up, we did a great interview about kind of your upbringing and how that led to some things later on. And we talked about how your dad kind of pushing you along and trying to create the situation to get you to the pros. First, it was kind of on the baseball side and then on the football side. But what's interesting to me about your journey where you kind of started to go to college is I think a lot of people wouldn't know that you actually weren't at an arc where you actually were going to move on as a quarterback. You started at a different position and you didn't, and a lot of people know you went to NC State, but you also started at a different school.
Yeah. I went to the local junior college. It was about a couple miles from my house, Pierce Junior College, and it wasn't like I was recruited there. So we ended up being pretty good, and we were for most of the season. I was there 2 years for most of the, but I only played one, and we were for most of the year number one in the country. And then from there, I ended up getting offered a few scholarships and took the one that led me to NC State and never looked back. And that was some of the best years, 2 years actually, two of the best years of my life.
It's always amazing to me that people can switch positions fairly late in their journey to where you can go all the way through a lot of the testing and a lot of the different experiences that you go through and switch from safety to quarterback or quarterback to safety back to quarterback. Well, there's a ton of different positions. The defense to offensive switch seems like the greatest one to me in some of these positions. You've had quarterbacks that have switched to linebacker, and right. You've had all sorts of different things. But that transition is interesting to me because you were just trying to, I think, for most of your life, you were led on the path of kind of least resistance of how can we make it further, mainly because of your dad. And so to toggle back and forth between those two positions is interesting. And then you become a very successful quarterback, but everybody seemed to miss that at the beginning.
Yeah. I actually, like through youth football, I was pretty good. And then even in high school, I wasn't bad, but I went great. And my senior year, we just happened to have a guy that was better. And so I had to switch to play safety. And then we ended up going to the championship game, so it wasn't like we were bad. But then, I had to kind of start the process all over again in junior college. and basically learned a lot from my experience at Pierce College. We had a great coach, Jim Fenwick, who's now passed away. But I learned so much about the passing game that I never would have known prior. And so also, this is interesting, that in high school, the head coach, who's now passed away as well, his name was Bob Donovan, and I never knew this, that Bob Donovan had played receiver at San Jose State with another pretty good football coach named Bill Walsh.
Wow.
And so we had some of that, quarterback footwork and some of those things in our, in what we did. And so I always thought that was, and I only learned that about maybe, I don't know, half a dozen years ago.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a heck of a connection as far as coaching trees go there. And I mean, the Bill Walsh coaching tree, you can't even call it a tree anymore. It's a forest at this point in time.
That's a very good way to put that. Yeah.
So, there's got to be a lot of seeds that are planted. Shayne, I'm curious about, we were talking about position switches. Have there been a lot of kickers that have either switched from another position or switched to another position? That's got to be a tough transition because you're such a specialist. But can you? I'm testing your encyclopedic knowledge here that Dan and I were just touting in the studio. But I'm curious if you can think of something that I won't put you on the spot. You might have to think about it a little bit.
I can tell you, Tommy Tupa. If you remember that name.
I do remember that name.
Okay.
Eric probably does.
Yeah. He did a spectacular job of filling in as the emergency quarterback.
Right. I got a good one for you.
I know that Mike
You're
Vander.
not going to like the team, but I got a good one for you.
Okay.
Hit us.
Okay, Jerry Kramer.
Oh, okay. The Packers, right?
Packers, yeah. He was a kicker, too.
Oh, wow. Was this during the soccer style days or straight on days?
No, straight on.
Okay. Yeah.
George Blanda.
Yep. Well, and back then,
a few.
Most of those guys back then were I mean, even Walter Payton was the kicker on his team until he got to the NFL.
I can believe he would be the designated kicker, passer, whatever.
He was and so was Randy Moss. But I think the more specialized you get, it becomes harder and harder to do that. Now, I do know some guys in college that have played other positions. I know some guys in actually, I had a guy at Michigan State when I was coaching there. He was like our backup punter. Injuries came down to where he was the guy in the game. He actually ended up getting hurt, and he's out for a year. He comes back, tries to kick, turns into a tight end, ends up becoming a starting tight end for Michigan State. And so, it was, Tyler Hunt did a heck of a job, just such a phenomenal athlete with a lot of size, but came to college as a kicker. But at his high school, he was the starting quarterback, linebacker. He was everything. But
pretty good. Had I got pushed into duty, I could have served as our drop kicker.
Okay.
I'm a pretty good drop kicker. I had a max distance of about 45.
Yeah. Actually, I played golf with Doug Flutie. He had a similar thing that he could do.
Yeah. So, anyway.
I know a good kicking coach. If you want to get into that still, Eric, I can put in a word for you. He's sitting about 2 feet from me here.
All right. Well, if worse comes to worse and things kind of turn south, I'll give you a call on that.
I think both of our backs and legs and hips would probably argue against that for both of us.
I would agree with you. Yep. I'm more into working on pitching wedges and 7-irons right
There
now.
you go.
It is amazing. You talked about, Shayne, you talked about going into golf afterwards. That's got to be a very smooth transition for a lot of former athletes. There's a reason that you guys all go into golf. You have the complexity, but not necessarily the strain on the body there. So that's, but it's something that you can still kind of drive at and learn and kind of test your athleticism and kind of scratch that sports itch without testing your body so much. Yeah. Still
going to get a little bit of shoulder here, back there, knee here, there. I think for most of us, though, especially for a kicker, okay, is understanding rhythm and tempo. That's kind of a big thing. And I think for anyone else who's just athletic, it's understanding, repeatability and technique and trying to actually fit inside of a stencil and do it the same way, and the challenge of fitting inside that stencil on every swing, and understanding effort and power and knowing when not to do too much and all that. I think we all can kind of relate to that when it comes to certain things.
Definitely, especially the golf side of things. Go ahead, Erik.
Well, I was just going to say that I've learned, I've started taking lessons about, a couple years ago, and it's amazing how your body's actually supposed to work and how the golf club's designed to work with your body, and things that I've never known before, and how much a little information, how far it can actually go. And golf itself, like you said, some people call it a sport. My girlfriend does not. She calls it an activity. And so, but whatever it is, I think it's a great avenue, a path that you can take with you wherever you go. It's a great way to see the country, the state, the world, whatever. And so to me, it's proven to be a good, something to throw yourself into that you can go and travel with as well.
Somehow I'm not surprised that Anna calls that an activity. That doesn't surprise me knowing her here. But we're going to come back here. We're going to take a quick break, and then I want to come back and kind of discuss the NFL part of your career, because it's a very interesting arc with a lot of different teams. There's even some CFL experience. I also am going to throw in a tidbit there because I want to talk nicknames, because Shayne talked about kind of what he viewed himself as that I could view as a nickname for him, and you have a couple nicknames that I found that I want to see how those came about and if those are for real here. So stick with us. We'll come back with Erik Kramer. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. Coming back here with Erik Kramer, talking about his career and different aspects of his journey here along the way, because it was a very, obviously people here, locals, associate you with being with the Lions. Bears fans remember that era, but there were a bunch of other teams thrown in. And I'm curious kind of how you see that arc of your career, because I don't think there are some people that end up getting associated with the CFL in some ways. I didn't remember earlier on that had been a stop in your career, but you kind of dabbled in the NFL and then went to the CFL and then came back, which is kind of an unusual storyline there. So I wanted to get your experience with kind of how those transitions worked along the way.
Yeah, so it took place over 13 years. And so initially, year zero, I ended up playing at NC State. In my last year, I was Atlantic Coast Conference Player of the Year. And it went from not getting drafted and trying out with this New Orleans Saints, getting cut, going back to school, thinking I was going to be a coach or who knows what. And then I got a call from a few NFL teams that there was an imminent strike going to happen, and did I want to come play for them? Ended up going to play for the Atlanta Falcons, and we played 3 games. They ended up keeping me after that for that year, so that was 1987. And then I was the last cut on the following training camp, and ended up going to Calgary Stampeders in the CFL. They had 6 games remaining on their schedule. And so played in all those 6 and came back for the next year. And I had a 2-year contract. And we had a live scrimmage, inter-squad scrimmage, before we even played a game. And I ended up blowing out a posterior cruciate ligament on my left knee. So that season was done. And then I ended up calling, I didn't have a way to go back. And so, not that I wanted to. And then, so I called NFL teams just on thinking, hey, maybe someone will give me a call back. And so the Lions did. Ended up going there and playing for 4 years, and free agency hit, and they didn't offer me a contract, so I ended up going to Chicago and played for the Bears. And then my last year was with the Chargers, but when they were in San Diego. So that was the 13 years in a nutshell that had quite a few twists and turns, ups and downs. Made some great friends over that time, and I think had a pretty good influence on wherever I went.
That's one of my favorite parts of the career part of your journey that I learned from your book. I didn't know this before that, but it just blew my mind that you actually basically cold called a bunch of NFL teams to see if you could get a job. That is one of my favorite parts because of how it turned out, because then that started arguably your two most successful stints in the NFL, because you went with the Lions and then the Bears, which I apologize here, Erik. I was remiss in not mentioning this in the last interview, because we talked about your passing yardage record falling this year to Caleb, but you still have the single season passing touchdowns record. And I uncovered that in my research. So I want to make sure we have that on record here.
Good job on that. So that's true. But you're right. I think, not taking no for an answer is oftentimes, the way to go. And I didn't know this until this past off season. Bill Keenest, who was with the Lions as a media relations director, got inducted into the Hall of Fame. And so I went back there. Anna went with me, and so there was also Jimmy Ray. Jimmy Ray was the receivers coach with the Atlanta Falcons that 1 year that I was there. So we got to talking, and he's also in the Hall of Fame as an assistant coach. And so we got to talking, and I said, I didn't know you were that Jimmy Ray. So he played quarterback at Michigan State and was on a team coached by Duffy Daugherty when black athletes in particular weren't even on what was then white college football teams, much less having a black quarterback, who then went on and they won the Rose Bowl. So while I'm telling him that, he tells me, going all the way back to that strike, he goes, man, when that strike happened, we wanted you bad. That's pretty good to hear from a coach that remembered that all the way back then, which was also the reason I went to Detroit. Because as I found out, only getting reconnected with June Jones, did I find out he was the guy that actually, when I called the Lions, he's the guy that said, oh, yeah, let's work him out. So it was June Jones who ended up getting me to the Lions. So it's not always the traditional route, but it sure, in 2 times in my life, it really paid off.
It's a great example for people in general, because there's kind of 2 things there that I take out of that. Which one you highlighted, that you just want to keep driving, you want to keep going. Shayne talked about it in the first segment. You want to keep growing, you want to have a growth mindset. You kept on going when other people might have been discouraged, and that got you some great opportunities and continued your career a lot further than it would have if you would have just laid back and said, no, I'm done with this. I guess nobody wants me. You kept on that path, but it's also sometimes who you know and how you interact with them too. So you had those past connections that you just dealt with them the way that you would deal with anybody else, but the history with them, your success with them, your interactions, proving your worth, your talent, those things all contributed in ways that you couldn't have foreseen at the time.
That's probably a good way to put that. And the way I would describe it is I really love the grind of working towards something. I'd never had anything in my thoughts about proving anybody wrong. It was really just the pursuit of something was what it was all about. And as long as there was something out there that I could put my efforts and concentration into, that was everything. And That's what football provided me. Even when I was on the outside looking in, that sometimes you got to make your own chances.
Exactly. And it's a good lesson for everybody here, good lesson learned. Now, I want to end the pro segment here on kind of a lighter note. I was doing some research to make sure I got all the teams right, had all my notes down, and I uncovered 2 nicknames for you over the course of your career. My question, before I give them to you, I'm wondering if you had more than that, or if you're aware of maybe what 2 I've uncovered.
Well, I think I know one of the 2 that you uncovered. So is one of them brass?
Yes, that's the one that I thought you would guess. The other one, I was somewhat aware of that one. The other one gave me a laugh because I'm a fan of the origin of right. This. So that was the other one that kind of surprised me, although I did understand it.
So would that be Cosmo?
That would, yes, yeah, because I'm a big Seinfeld fan. And then when I read that, you don't exactly have a Cosmo Kramer vibe. You have an Eric Kramer vibe. You're like his cousin.
Let me tell you the story of how the brass came about, and then the Cosmo one's a shorter version. So when I was in Detroit, we're playing the Indianapolis Colts. This is back when, prior to Peyton Manning, they had, I forget who the quarterback was. It might have been Jeff George. But they still had a fairly good team. I think Eric Dickerson was the running back. And in any event, I was the backup, and Rodney Peete had gotten injured, and then I think it was, if I'm remembering correctly, the Colts fumbled the punt, or whatever they call it. You know, the guy punted the ball, and the returner muffed it, and then we recovered it, and I forget what yard line it was on. But it was roughly let's say 35, 40-yard line going in. And so we run a few plays, and then it's like a 3rd and 1, and we had 2 running plays. We had a draw to bury and a off tackle slant, and the play was called to bury. And so I get up and I look out there, and Willie Green, he's got press coverage on him, and so we had a little signal, and so Willie actually gave it to me for a fade stop, and so I forget what yard line we're on, probably about the 10 or 12 yard line, and threw it for a touchdown. And so I'm running off the field, and Jerry Wampler, who was the line coach, he's like got his hands on his knees, kind of looking up but laughing at the same time. And I said, "What?" And he goes, "A 3rd down, and you take the ball out of Barry Sanders' hands and throw a pass." He goes, "You could have been buying your own ticket home after this game." So we get over to the sideline and over the bench, and I told Willie, I said, "Was that 3rd down?" And so the brass nickname came after the game when we go to get on the bus, and all the linemen were sitting in the back, and Ken Dallafor, who played offensive guard, he shouts out, "Hey, Brass, come on back here." And so that's how that came into being. And so that was pretty good. I've got some good Ken Dallafor stories, but Cosmo was a nickname given to me in Chicago by then ticket manager George McCaskey, and who was apparently also a fan of the Friends TV show. And so because Kramer that was my name, certainly I didn't look anything like the character, but that was his little inside joke with me about who maybe just because I have the name, he should call me Cosmo. So that was that.
There's an episode of Seinfeld where they run into the bizarro versions of themselves, and you would be closer to the bizarro Cosmo Kramer, because he's a lot more intellectual, and he's kinder than sure. Kramer, and so that's what I envision is you're kind of the bizarro. Your last name's still Kramer, so you're the bizarro Kramer, but in a good way.
I love it. That's great. So yeah, we certainly had some fun times. I'll share one if we have time. Do we have time for me to show you one story about Ken Dallafor?
Definitely, go for it.
Okay, so Ken Dallafor was kind of the Conrad Dobler. Do you remember that name?
I recognize the name, yes.
So Conrad Garbler was a very dirty offensive lineman. He had a reputation for being a dirty player. So Ken was not the most gifted athletically. So he had no problem if he couldn't block you traditionally, he'd leg whip you, or he'd, whatever he took to get the job done. And so we're walking off the field after one game, and we're just like on the way to the locker room. And as I'm talking, he interrupts me. He says, "Hey, if you're going to walk off the field with me, you better buckle up." like trouble's coming between now and the time we get off the field. So what a great guy he is, though. And so anyway, yeah, we certainly shared some good times.
It sounds like we could do a whole interview on stories of him here. I've got him pulled up on my computer. I didn't realize he double dipped here. He played for both professional Michigan teams. He played for the Panthers and the Lions here.
And the Chargers. So that's how he was telling me how he came to the Lions. Was Jerry Wampler he was at some point coaching the offensive line with the Chargers. And back then, they had something called Plan B. It was kind of the first swipe at free agency. And so Plan B players were those that were left unprotected. So Ken was put on that Plan B list, and Jerry Wampler calls me and says, "Hey, please come to Detroit because we need guys like you that know how to teach other that just by example, other guys are going to learn how it doesn't matter how you get the job done, get it done." So that was how Ken came to Detroit from the Chargers. And I remember that Dan Fouts used to do broadcast-wise some of our games. And so I remember going to, a few of us would hang out and go have breakfast and, with Dan the day before the game or something after the walkthrough. And so, yeah, Ken's a very good guy.
I'd like to talk more about him maybe in a subsequent interview, but we've got a couple more parts to this interview to do. We're going to cover your post-career. I think it'll probably be in two parts here because of how dense it is, but we're looking forward to getting you back for that. We'll get in touch with you about that, but make sure to tell people where they can kind of follow you, tell them about the book and the podcast in the meantime if they want to catch up on some of the great tidbits that you've given us in this interview.
Okay, great. So I've got a website. It's erikkramer12.com. And then also the book that I co-wrote is called The Ultimate Comeback. It's on Amazon. I'd say within a couple of weeks, I'm going to put up the audio version of that as well. And then the podcast is called The Quarterback and the Con Artist. So during my recovery from a traumatic brain injury, I was taken advantage of by a woman, and financially, and abused by the court systems as well. And so I think it's an interesting look back, a captivating look back at some of went into that time period.
It's great stuff, but the book and the podcast, I've consumed both. They're both a wealth of information, and it'll help you understand the conversations that we're about to have with Erik, because they'll be very informational and inspirational as well. So we appreciate you joining the show, Erik, and we look forward to having you back on to continue the discussion here soon.
Very good. I appreciate your time as always, and well, I would say go Bears, but there's no game coming up for them, but there is an off season. So hopefully things, improve on the other side of the ball this off season.
Exactly. We'll be tracking the Bears and the Lions alike here in the off season. But yeah, we'll talk to you soon and maybe talk about some of the off season goals here of both those teams. So appreciate you joining the show, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Take care.
Thanks, Erik.
Thank you.